Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how you can enable a certain property on Moodle where a question is made available to a student in a quiz only after the previous question has been solved. Okay, so in the end semester like scenario where it's very critical to ensure as much integrity as possible even in online proctoring, right, or an open book exam, you want to, and therefore you want to minimize any discussion between the students. So the philosophy here is that even if you randomize the questions and whatever you do, right, because all the questions are available to every student right at the start of the exam, it is possible for students to actually simply partition a question paper, and each student solves a part of the question paper, even if it is multiple types of questions, and then they all pool the answers together and then submit something by the end of the duration of the exam. We want to avoid this, okay, and the key is to ensure that all questions are not available to the student at the start of the exam. Okay, so there are two things that need to be done. One is you have to set the timing of the availability of each question correctly. Second, the subsequent question should be accessible only when the previous question has been completed and submitted. Okay, so first let's figure out what the typical time is going to be. Let's assume that you have an end semester exam which has 3 questions, and let's say nominally each question would take about half an hour to solve, right? Now, because it's an online scenario and there might be internet breaks or something, you might want to give more time because to accommodate for all this. So you typically, let's assume that you double the time. So there is 1 hour available for each question. So what you do now is that let's look at the path that a good student or a fast student would take and a path that a slow student would take. So shown on top here is the path that a fast student would take, right? That is, I'm also assuming that there's no internet connectivity problem, nothing, everything is in place here. So question 1, start at 9 and finish at 9:30. Question 2, you start at 9:30, finish at 10. Then question 3, between 10 and 10:30. Okay, let's assume there are only 3 questions and therefore the fast student will be done by 10:30. Okay, now let's look at what happens to a sort of a slow student, right? So let's assume that there is some internet break, something in the first question takes 1 hour to solve, right? Second question, let's assume there's no internet break, nothing, and the student is able to finish it in half an hour. By 10:30 he or she is done. Then between 10:30 and 11:30 the third question is completed, right? So what happens is, if you look at, if there were only 3 questions, right, by 10:30 the good student is done, right, or the fast student is done and is actually available to help the other students. Remember, because now my quiz has to be open all the way till 12, okay, just to accommodate the students with bad internet connections and slow, who need some more time and so on. So there is this buffer time that can be exploited. So the key thing is to first of all ensure that your end semester has about 5 questions and you say that you will pick best 3 out of 5. Okay, that way the good student will keep going, will not stop at 10:30. He or she will go all the way till 11:30. Okay, now on the other hand, the slow student will be able to complete 4 questions, let's say, right, and maybe the 4th question partially, right? However, I'm going to take only 3 questions and therefore the first 3 will be used, right? There's nothing unfair here. You can in fact make question 4 and 5 sort of more challenging and more interesting, right? Of course, the students need not know about this, right? So now the question is, what should be the time, right? When can the students access this, question 1, 2, 3, and so on, right? What should be the timing? So let's assume first of all I am, there are 2 things in Moodle. One is the duration of the quiz, right, when the question can be accessed, and other is a time limit. So time limit is after you start within 1 hour you're supposed to submit that question, right? Submit that quiz. Okay, so I am assuming that there are two factors that we can use here, right? So first let us look at the uh, time duration, because I want to see for how long each question should be made available. Okay, so you look at question 1. The good student starts at 9, finishes at 9:30, but the slow student takes a little more time. So clearly question 1 has to be made available for a full hour, right? And of course from the time you start you have to finish it within 1 hour, right? So that's what we are doing here. Question 1 is available from 9 to 10, and from whenever you start it has to be finished within 1 hour, assuming by the way that the nominal time to solve the question is only half an hour. Okay, question 2 now should be made available right from the beginning. Okay, let's say that some good student, right, wants to solve finishes question 1 very quickly and wants to move on to question 2, right, or is unable to answer question 1 but wants to move on to question 2, then we must allow the student to actually submit question 1, forego that question and move on to question 2, right? In which case the quiz will be available, question will be available all the way from 9, right? But it has to be available till 11, because remember most of the the worst case, the slow student will finish this question only at 10 and you need to give 1 hour from there, right? So you can actually work out this calculation and see that quiz 2 has to be available from 9 to 11, quiz 3 is all the way from 9 to 12. Okay, now the bonus questions or the extra questions 4 and 5, again just like question 3, you make it available all through the things, all through the duration of the quiz. Now the point is that every question from the time you start, the student will have to submit it within 1 hour. Okay, so if the student starts question 2 at 9:25, then it will be submitted by 10:25, right? And then the student can move on to question 3, right? This is the fundamental philosophy that we are going to use now, and we also have to enable this dependency where question 2 is accessible only after question 1 is submitted. Okay, for this purpose we are going to use the quiz feature in Moodle, and each quiz will allow only one question or maybe a couple of questions, 1 or 2 questions, right? In this case I am assuming that each quiz will allow only one particular question. Okay, so let's see how I can do that, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create there is already question 1. I'll just show you the settings here. Okay, and the timing, right? Let's say, let me make it 20th December, right? Between let me go by the same time that I mentioned here, right? Between 9 and 10, right? And the time limit is 1 hour, which means from the time you start you have to finish the quiz within 1 hour. And very important, when time expires, open attempts are automatically submitted. Okay, this means that let's say a student has opened it but has not submitted it, then what happens? Automatically at the expiry time of 1 hour or the end time, whichever is earlier, the answer will be submitted simply onto the server. Okay, then you look at the grade, and of course you will say only one attempt allowed. This is very clear, very critical. Review options, you turn off everything, and maybe because this is end sem, even after the quiz is closed you don't want them to see anything, right? You may want to reveal it much later to them, right? And then extra restrictions or attempt not necessarily, right? Common module settings not necessary, and restrict access. Since this is the quiz for question 1, nothing needs to be done here. Okay, so because question 1 is the first question, and you cannot say that it has to be done only after you finish some other question, so there's no extra restriction here, right? But this is very important, activity completion. You must check this particular thing where you say that let me open this, okay, because I'm editing this, right? So so you say that you know normally this is what will show up when you create a new quiz. Students can manually mark the activity as completed, but that's not what we want. Show activity as completed when conditions are met. What is the condition? When a grade is obtained. What is a grade? It means that the answer has been submitted, right? And the question has been evaluated by Moodle. Okay. Of course, we are not saying it has to be a passing grade or a or whatever, right? It's just we are just saying that the student must have completed that question. This is very critical because the next question will now depend on this, right? And students must view this activity. So don't check this, because viewing the question does not mean that the activity is complete. If you set this, it means that the student can open question 1, view it, and then open question 2 immediately, and then question 3, and so on. So it has to be set so that you are uh, completing the activity when the grade is obtained, right? And then you say save and return to course. Okay, and maybe I will rename this to end sem q1, because this is question 1, right? Now I've already added question 2. I'll show you how I will add question 3 to this. Okay, I'm saying end sem q2, right? So this, what are we going to do? We are now going to enable question 2 from 9 all the way to 11, right? On 20th December from 9 a.m. right, 9 a.m. all the way to 20th December all the way to 11 a.m. Again, time limit is 1 hour. From the time you start, it has to be 1 hour, and open attempts are automatically submitted. Again, grade only 1 attempt, right? Questions, behavior, review options, again you uncheck everything because it's an end semester exam, right? And restrict access. Now this is very important. Now this is where I'm going to impose the constraint that this quiz can be accessed only when the previous quiz is complete. So I'm saying, let me remove this. Ideally, there would be no restriction. I'm going to add a restriction and say enable only on activity completion. Okay. Now, which activity are we looking for? We are looking for end semester question 1 activity must be completed, must be marked complete. Okay, don't say with a pass grade or a fail grade or anything. It must be marked complete. That means a grade has been obtained, because that's what we have said earlier. Now even here you have to say the same thing, right? That you say that the activity is complete. I mean, this is what this is what would be available by default. Students can manually mark the activity as complete, but now I'm saying show activity as complete when conditions are met, when the grade has been received, right? And then I say save and return to course. Okay, now this is very important. Look at this. So technically I can now open question 1, right? And this thing, but question 2 is not accessible. I will now say turn editing on. I am now going to add another quiz to this. Okay, and right, so end sem question 3. Okay, and timing, I'm going to say the same thing, between 20th December between 9, right? And now remember, question 3 has to be between 9 and 12. Okay, 9 a.m. all the way to 12 noon. Okay, and of course enable for 60 minutes. enable the time limit. Open attempts are submitted automatically. Grade, sorry, one attempt only, right? And question behavior, no problem. This is review, uncheck everything from here. You don't want them to see anything during the quiz, you don't want them to see anything after the quiz either, right? And then you come to restrict access. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a restriction on quiz end sem question 3. And what's the restriction? It's going to be based on activity completion. Activity completion of what? On end sem question 2. Okay, must be marked complete, right? And my activity completion here is, as I told you, by default you will see students can manually mark the activity as completed. What I want to do is activity when conditions are met, it's not viewing, it has to be students must receive a grade, and then I go ahead and save this and return to the course. Okay, so end sem question 1 is available when when the time is met, when the timing constraints are met, right? On December 20th at 9 a.m. it will open. Question 2 will be accessible in that time window, but also only if question 1 has been solved. Question 3 again will be available in that time window if question 2 has been solved, right? So you see this very clearly here. Okay, and now what you can do is you can go and populate your questions, populate this quiz with various questions of either randomized questions or fixed questions or calculated type questions, and then you can effectively create a very unique paper for every student and almost make interaction sort of irrelevant in this particular scenario. Let me switch my view now to a student. Yeah, so clearly what it says is, end semester question 1 is alone accessible. Question 2 and 3 are not accessible because I do not have any, I have not completed question 1, right? So now I go to quiz 1, right? And of course it says the quiz is not currently available because it's available only on Sunday from 9 to 10 a.m. Okay, now if you come here, of course question 2 will not be available now because it's not in the fixed, it's not in the given period, and neither have I completed question 1, right? So this way you can sort of populate these quizzes now, right, with each of these quizzes with 1 or 2 questions, right, and enable this whole process to be completed.